Awesome. Okay, then let's head over to the slides. And domain storytelling will be our topic today. And good morning from my side, where I live on the globe. It's early in the morning. I think in Singapore it's late afternoon. Nonetheless, I think we'll have a good time, and I would like to gather you around the virtual campfire that we can see here. And yeah, please come here with me, sit around this campfire and imagine our ancestors, the cavemen. Cavemen sitting around their campfire many 1,000 years ago. And imagine outside it's winter, that's why they're sitting in their cave. The snow is snowing, the wind is howling, and inside is warm and comfy, but it's also a bit boring. So everybody's happy when one of the people of the tribe, one of the hunters, stands up and tells the other people how it used to be in the summer when they were hunting, when they were gathering, when they were hunting for the mighty bison, and how they hunted the mighty bison, and how in the end they killed it, and how they are now living from the flesh of this mighty bison that they hunted. And after sorry after the hunter has finished his story, there is a quiet, and everybody's staring into the fire, and then they hear a scratch from the wall, and they turn their heads, and then they see on the wall one of the other members of the tribe has painted a picture of the story they just heard, used coal and the blood of the animals to draw a picture onto the cave wall. And 16,000 years later, we still can see this picture, this one of the earliest pieces of human art. This is a picture from the cave of Altamira in Spain. And not only the bison is there, but also all the rest of the story, the hunters and the spears that they are carrying. And so what we can see is storytelling, that's something basic human, that's deep in our hearts and our bodies, that's deeply human rooted in all of us. And what we want to do with domain storytelling is still the same. We still want to spark a fire, we want to tell a story, and we want to paint a picture here. Of course, today everything has changed a bit. So the fire that we're gathering around today is usually something like a whiteboard or so a big modeling canvas, we're calling that. And the story isn't told by hunters anymore. The story is told by our users, the people that we are building software for. And also, um, uh, the picture isn't painted on the cave wall with animal blood anymore in coal, but the picture is usually painted on a, like here, on a whiteboard or on a virtual whiteboard today with Sharpies and sticky notes and stuff. So here you can see my good friend and colleague Stefan. I hope you can see him. I'm doing domain storytelling here. Stefan is not here today, so you will have to get along with me. And who am I? A short introduction. You already heard that I'm a coder, coach, and consultant. And are you still seeing my slides? Yeah, okay. Sorry, maybe I have a problem here with Gather Town. Sorry. So I'm a coder, coach, consultant, and my name is Henning Schwentner, which, well, is kind of hard to pronounce if you're not, if your mother tongue is not German. So Henning is maybe the name you have to remember. So, okay, and I work as a coder, coach, and consultant. That means when I'm lucky, I get my hands on the keyboard. But I also do what I do with you in my work time today. So I'm standing or sitting in front of people and tell them how to do it right with software development, with software architecture. And the main topic that I'm working on there is splitting the monolith. All of us have their big legacy systems, their monolithic systems that have to be modularized. And the method I'm going to show you today, this domain storytelling, also can help us there, splitting the monolith, getting a grip on how to modularize our old software. And what's interesting for me as a technical person is that you can build a monolith in every software, in every programming language. So I see many different technologies there, which is fun. Okay, and I work at a company that's called WPS. We're the one with the touch table. So since we're talking about storytelling, it's important to look at another story. And this time, not a story with caveman. That's now a story from a domain. Let's look at a story where we'll build software for. And what we can see here is it's important to have a storyteller and to have listeners when we are talking about stories. So let's start our story with looking at the domain. What is about? Imagine Bob. Bob is a victim of Dieselgate, so he wants to get rid of his old combustion engine and he wants to buy a new electrical powered car, like this Porsche Taycan. On the other hand, Bob has one problem. There is no money in his pocket. Anyway, he goes to his car dealer and asks them, do I get a car for this? And well, he fears that the answer will be this year. No way, no money, no car. But you know how car dealers are. They are people with ideas. And so the car dealer tells Bob, well, we have a solution for your problem. And that solution is called leasing. And leasing means we are going to buy the car for you. And then we are going to lease it to you for a monthly installment, for a monthly payment. So we're not only having the car manufacturer here who makes the car and the end customer who wants the car, but we're now getting the leasing company in between. So the car manufacturer sells the car to the leasing company, and the leasing company then rents this car for a monthly payment to our end customer. Okay, let's look at this story from another point of view. So we have a customer, our Bob here, who tells his wish for a car to the salesperson, the car dealer salesperson. The salesperson will then calculate the installment for the contract. The installment is the monthly payment that the customer is going to pay for this contract. And let's assume the customer says, well, I can afford this installment. Then the customer will then sign the contract and give it back to the salesperson. And then the salesperson will pass on this contract to what's called the risk manager. The risk manager is a person that will then check the credit rating, that is the risk of the customer, and after that calculate the resale value of the car, that is the risk of the object of the car. And based on this check, on this risk check, on this risk assessment, based on this credit rating and this resale value, they will vote then the contract. To vote means say, yes, we want to do this contract, or no, the risk is too high, we can't do this contract. And assuming that the risk manager voted positively, then the salesperson will give the car to our customer, to our Bob. So this is what we can see here. That is our first domain story. And what you can see is domain storytelling is about drawing diagrams, about drawing pictures. Yes. So it's a simple notation to draw diagrams, but it's not only a pictographic language, it's also a workshop format. We also want to bring people together. So let's look more closely on what we just did. Let's look at domain storytelling explained. So domain storytelling is one of several tools that belong to a family of tools. And this family is called collaborative modeling. Collaborative modeling. Collaborative modeling means we are not modeling alone, not only us technical people, not only us developers, but we want to be together with the domain experts. So the basic idea of collaborative modeling, modeling collaboratively, is bring together people from the tech side, us developers, programmers, and people from the business sides, domain experts, users, subject matter experts. And they should work together on the knowledge. They should exchange the knowledge of the domain. So what they are going to do is knowledge crunching. This is a term from DDD, from domain-driven design. Knowledge crunching is the idea that together we want to chew on the knowledge until the juice comes out of it. The essence comes out of it. So we want to get the essential facts. That's interesting for us. And there's different methods in this collaborative modeling area. User story mapping, you might use that. Event storming is another one with sticky notes. And then there's domain storytelling, what we're looking at this moment. So domain storytelling, what is it again? It's this pictographic language that we just saw, plus a workshop format. And both of them are equally important. So let's look at the workshop format. The most important thing with the workshop format is that we want to bring together the right people. Who are the right people? Of course, when you can get Chuck Norris, he's always the right people, but usually he can't make it because he doesn't have the time, because he has to change the world or something, to save the world or something like that. If Chuck can't make it, who are then the right people? Then the right people are storytellers and listeners. So people that have knowledge about the domain, that tell their story, and people who want to get that knowledge, to learn that knowledge. Listeners, storytellers, listeners, those are the two main roles in a domain storytelling workshop. And then there's usually another role, that's the moderator, the person that leads us through the workshop, and the modeler that also does the modeling by drawing the picture on the wall. So, and the basic idea is that we let the storytellers, usually the domain experts, tell their story. Of course, best not fairy tales, as we can see here. So we want to have those people in the room that really are doing the work, not their bosses who think they know how the work is done. We want the real people who know how the work is really done. And we want to listen to their story, and we want to get rid of misunderstandings. So this is something that happens often when we bring together business people and domain business people on the one hand, technical people on the other hand, and there's often many different misunderstandings between us and them, between technical people and business people. So this is also about expectations management. So this is often what our users are wishing for, and this is what they get. Okay, we want to move this a bit more closely together. So the basic idea is that while the story is told and we're listening to it, we repeat it. So when we hear the sentence, the salesperson passes on the contract to the risk manager, then we draw this onto the modeling canvas. We draw salesperson hands over contract to risk manager. And what we can see is misunderstandings directly, because this up here, that's what the salesperson tells us, or the other business experts tells us, and this is what we have understood, and we mirror, we reflect what we have understood of what they have told us, and then we show it to them. So here, our domain expert could say, well, I do not hand over the contract, I pass it on, and this is important for me. So we have to change this here to get the right understanding. So when a misunderstandings happen, then it will be obviously directed. That's the idea of this. So it's a form of active listening. Active listening means not only listening and then nodding and say, yes, 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 I do understand you, but add to this also what I have understood. So repeating what I have understood from what I have been told. I can do this by rephrasing, saying it again in my own words, or I can do this by painting a picture. That's the idea of domain storytelling. We repeat what we have understood by drawing a diagram. And we want to do this with concrete stories and not with abstract processes. So the idea is we are looking at concrete stories that really happen in the domain, usually one case that we're looking at. And we're not using something like UML or BPMN. We're using a simple pictographic language because we want that it's easily understandable for our users, for our domain experts, which are usually not technical people and have no formal education in formal methods. That's why we're in domain storytelling, we're usually not using UML, BPMN, or more elaborated modeling notations, but we are using a very simple notations which can be learned in a couple of minutes. So how is this done? This notation, this pictographic language, the basic idea is that we record our story sentence by sentence. So when they tell us several sentences, then we draw them into the diagram. And it's made of basically two kinds of icons and one kind of arrow, and that's it. So the two kinds of icons are the actor, our stick figures, and all the other icons, the work objects, the things that the actors, the people are working on. And then there's one kind of arrow, the activity, what the actor does with the work object. So it's always actor, activity, work object. The actor does something with a work object. And then we have another element, that's the sequence number. The sequence number is used to bring time into the domain story. Okay, so in our example, the risk manager would be an actor, contract would be a work object, and votes would be an activity. What we can do now is vary the icons. So maybe we not only have a person actor, but maybe we also have a group actor, or IT systems can also appear as actors in a domain story. And the same is also true, of course, for the work objects. We're using different icons there as well. So in our story, we've seen that the installment has another icon than the car, to make it easily visible that we are having different things there. Okay. So this is what's happening. We're having these actors, we're having these work objects, and then there's one speciality that we're usually having the actors once and the work objects several times. The idea is that we want to develop the story around the actors and that we want to see the interaction between them. And there's also another property that is interesting, and that's different than in other modeling methods. And that is this here, that what's not part of the language. So we have actors, work objects, activities, but what we do not have is conditionals. We do not have an if-else or a switch case. We do not have an or. And this is by design. This is wanted. The idea is that we want to look at one case, that we want to look at one scenario. That's what it's called scenario-based modeling. We're looking at one case because one case can usually be complicated enough, and we want that one picture is small enough to fit into the head of our users, of our participants in the workshop. So that's the reason why we're usually not only having one domain story, but several domain stories. Not only one domain story, several domain stories that come together for the different cases. Usually we start with the good case, the 80% case, and then we move on and see, okay, what happens when something goes wrong, and we draw that into another diagram, into another picture. That's one reason why we have several stories. Another reason is what we call scope. The scope is defined by several factors. One factor is the granularity. So are we using coarse granularity? So are we looking up from the bird's eye perspective and doing a big picture here? Then we build a coarse grained domain story. Or are we looking at all the details? Then we're doing a fine grained domain story. That's one of the factors. Another scope factor is the time. Are we looking at the now or the tomorrow? So as is versus to be modeling, and other factors as well. Okay, but let's not talk too much about the theory. That what's really interesting is the practice. So let's roll our sleeves up, and I want to do a little exercise, a little demo with you. And I can't do that alone. I need you. You have to be my domain experts. So please come and join me, go to the microphones or come here on stage and model together with me. And I want to model a scenario that we probably all know. Like it used to be before the pandemic. I want to travel by train from a city A to a city B. And I will be the moderator and you will be my storytellers. So it would be great to hear from you. How does this work? And I'm going to switch my screen share. For that, I'm going to switch to another window. So you should see another browser window now from me with a tool that's called egan.io. That's an online tool for drawing domain stories. Okay. Can everybody see my browser? Okay, awesome. Then let's model how to travel by train. How's this done?
Maybe you have to buy your tickets. I'm not sure.
Yeah, awesome.
No, yeah.
Awesome, that's good. So the first step is you buy a ticket. And when you say you buy a ticket, who are you? What's your role in this story?
A traveler.
The traveler. Awesome. Okay, so the traveler buys a ticket. First step. Okay, and what happens then?
Maybe I have to hand the ticket to the station to scan my ticket or something.
Mm-hmm.
As a traveler.
Okay. Who's the one who will do the scanning? Who scans the ticket?
Maybe it's some machine.
Okay. What's the name
Or
of
the
that
officer.
machine? Or the officer? Okay, let's, for the sake of the exercise, let's stay with the officer. So like it used to be in the old days. So the officer scans the ticket of the traveler. And what I'm going to do is I write down an annotation variant of this. Scan is done by a machine. Okay, awesome. The traveler bought a ticket, and then the officer scans the ticket of the traveler, and then?
The traveler probably boards the train, or
Okay. I don't have a good train symbol here, so we have to go with the taxi icon, boards train. And then?
the train probably then starts moving to the destination.
And who's doing that? Moving the train?
Oh, probably a train operator.
Okay, so there's another actor here, the train operator. And you say they drive the train to the next station, right?
Yes.
To the station, and I'm writing down here they are doing this for the traveler. Okay, and then?
You reach the destination, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we rename that to destination station. And then we reach the destination, and then?
You alight the train.
Okay. So, alight train at destination station, right? Okay. And that's it? Or are we missing something? I'm going to step through this. So we start with the traveler buys a ticket, and then the officer scans the ticket of the traveler, and the traveler boards the train. The train operator drives the train to the destination station for the traveler, and then the traveler alights the train at the destination station. Okay. Is that it?
Seems like it is. Is there any missing flow?
Awesome. No, I think that's fine. So what we have here is a coarse-grained story, and that's good since we don't have much time here in our session. We only looked at the coarse-grained steps. So we just made one step, traveler buys ticket. But of course, when we have the time, then we say, well, this step here, buying a ticket, that's one coarse-grained step, but of course there are many tickets behind that. So one of the next steps would be, okay, let's look at the ticket purchase on a detailed level, on a fine-grained level. So then we would look at, okay, the traveler looks at the schedule and sees what's my starting station and what's the destination station and what connections are there, and then he buys a ticket with telling the conductor the connection he wants to have, and then they are talking about the price and the payment is made and all this stuff. So there's many different detailed steps, of course, and they are all hidden behind this step here, and that's totally okay. So it's awesome, the story that we built here. That's the idea of a coarse-grained story. Get a big picture of the belongings that we have here. Okay, I think we have another 5 minutes, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Then I'm going to switch to my slides again. And it's good that we have a bit of time, because then I can show you some other stuff. So we've now traveled by train from city A to city B. So we've seen how domain storytelling works in theory and practice, and what did we do this for? So what can we do now with these domain stories? I hope you see my slides again. Okay, awesome. So what are the purposes that we can use these domain stories for? There are several purposes. We can use them for different things. And maybe the first obvious one is that we learned about the domain. We learned what's happening. We learned also the words, the language. That's good. And also, we can use this now to come to user stories, that is requirements. So we can take the domain story and go to user story. Domain story, user story, they sound similar. It's a bit like with Java and JavaScript. They have similar names, but they're different animals. That's the same here. And when we have a domain story, we can then, when we have a coarse-grained domain story, we can say, okay, for every step, we build one user story. So that's one way to derive user stories from that. And then the second purpose is we can see how we design our program, how we implement our program. So I think that's for us here probably the most interesting thing. So we can see how we can build this model, the model for the domain in our software. So we can come from a domain story directly to code. And how can we do this? There's basically two rules of thumb here. And the first rule of thumb is we take the work objects and build classes out of those. And then we take the methods, then we take the activities and build methods out of them. So when we look at our domain story here from the leasing, then we can see probably the most important work object which appears again and again is the contract. And as I said, we are using the work objects and build classes out of them. So since we have an object contract, let's build a class contract here. And then we see and look for what's done with this work object. So a contract is signed and a contract is voted. So the next step would be, okay, we're building methods sign and vote on this contract. And what we get then, that's the dream of the object-oriented programmer. That's a domain model with rich domain behavior. So all the words that we see here, they come from the domain. So there's contract and sign and vote, and that's all words, all language from the domain. No, not our technical language, but we're expressing the domain here, and that's awesome. And of course, we can then translate that into code. So this is, for example, in Java. So class contract with method sign and a sign date and vote result. So there's a lot of domain language in this thing. And that's basically the main idea of object orientation, taking the objects out of the real world and making objects in the computer out of them. And if you want to go deeper with that and see how you can implement a real piece of software there and how this works out in practice, then I would like to point you to leasingninja.io. That's a project of mine which I use in my trainings to teach people how you can apply these ideas and how you can come from the analysis of a domain to a real implementation of that domain. So we look at this leasing domain, we analyze it, and then in the end we build code, and there's real code examples on GitHub there. So if you want to see how to build code with it, look at leasingninja.io. And then there's one more purpose that I want to tell you about, and that is domain stories for strategic design. So what's strategic design? Strategic design is the idea that when we build large software, it's usually a good idea to not build it as one big monolithic ball of mud, the big ball of mud, that's our anti-pattern here, but to build it out of several modules. And domain storytelling can help us find these modules. Domain storytelling can help us find boundaries. So when we look at this domain story again, then it is a good idea to ask, okay, where are boundaries here? Where are subdomains here in this big domain that we're looking at? And the question to ask with domain stories is, where which steps that we can see here are belonging together from an actor's perspective? Remember the stick figures, those are the actors. And I would argue these steps 1, 2, 3, and 8, they belong together. They form one subdomain, which might be called sales. And then these steps 5, 6, and 7, they also form a subdomain, which might be called risk assessment. And the idea of strategic design is to say, well, we're not building the one big monolithic leasing system now. No, we are building two modules, one module sales and one module risk assessment. And we will put them beside each other and there will be an interface between them. So this way we can build more modular software. And as I told you earlier, I'm often working with companies splitting up their monolith lists, and this is the way to go. You have the big monolithic system, you put it aside, you look at the domain first and you see, let's analyze this domain, let's find these subdomains, and then learn, okay, those are the subdomains, those are the modules that I would like to have. Let's now take the monolith out of the box and bring these modules into it. Okay, but that's of course another topic. We don't have the time for that now. One word that I want to plant in your head here is the bounded context. Bounded context, another word from DDD, from domain-driven design. A bounded context is one of these modules that we're building here. So the idea is for every subdomain that we find in the domain, we build one module in the software, and we call that a bounded context. Bounded because there's a boundary around it. The boundaries, those are very important. Okay. So I think the time is up, which is a pity. So we don't have the time to go back to our travel by train story. That would be the next step to do, see where can we find boundaries there. For the time being, I just can say there's more to be said on domain storytelling, but I don't have the time now.
Okay. It's okay.
So, whoop. There's one thing that I want to show you, and that is there are different tools that can be used. So I showed you an online tool, which is called egan.io. So if you want to try this modeler here, that's egan.io. I will post that to the chat also later, that you can find it. But you don't have to use the tool. You can also do it with just a whiteboard or with a whiteboard and sticky notes. That's also nice. That's also fun. So you don't need a computer to do this kind of modeling. Yeah, that's it so far. Coming to a conclusion. If you are interested, if I could spark the fire here and you want to read more, there's a webpage. It's called domainstorytelling.org. And then there's the book about the topic, domain storytelling. And I'm very proud. Together with the Stefan I showed you earlier, I wrote this book and it just came out 2 weeks ago. So if you're gonna buy it now, for example, with this link on Amazon here, then you will be among the first people on earth that are having this book. So yeah, please go ahead and buy it. And of course, yeah, you can get it signed. That's one of the problems with these online conferences. But next time I'm in Singapore, of course, I will do a signature session. Or when we meet somewhere else in the world. Yeah. So much about advertisement, Leasing Ninja.io. I told you that. And yeah, the end is near. Usually, I would also not give you only a signature, but some swag. Can't do this now. Sorry about that. I just can say thank you and happy end. That's it. And of
Thank
course,
you very much.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks very much, Henning for the talk. I think we might have some questions.